It challenges us to see what type of leader are we. Do we say we really want to lead and be for the betterment of people, or do we want to be the leader that people see? Leaders give the room what they need, and that what they need may not come from you. They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting what you represent.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Mr. Adrian Crawford. Good morning. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I feel like we need to talk about something that the people probably don't know about you.
Oh, gosh. What is that?
You love Starbucks.
I absolutely love Starbucks. Shout out Starbucks.
And that can be controversial, but guys, he loves it.
I do, because here's the reason why I love Starbucks. It's like my life is things change all the time. I am always like jumping and disrupting things, but I do like some parts of my life to just be steady. And it does not matter what Starbucks I go to, it's the same product. For the most part, it tastes the same wherever I go. So that's why I like going there. Because, you go to some new coffee shop, try this local place. And you go to the local place and you're like, okay, it's cool. But it's just not something that's been consistent. Sometimes in life, I just need something that's just steady.
Yeah, there's something there. It's like, it doesn't matter how good it is.
Wow, that's
as
crazy.
long as it's just there,
No, but Starbucks is good. Now, I'm not talking about, listen, what I get a black and white mocha, there's sugar, there's all that type of stuff.
There's sugar.
There's all type of stuff like that. I'm not, again, for all the coffee snobs out there that talk, it tastes, and, it tastes oaky or whatever.
Oaky.
The same thing. People who smoke cigars or people who, when it comes to like whiskey or bourbon, they all just are like just pretentious, sometimes douchebags when there's like, oh yeah, this has this oaky wood ground like root taste. I'm like, dude, no, it just burns. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's the bourbon. I'm like, no, I just go simply off the fact of like, does it taste like I'm drinking moonshine or not? You know what I'm saying? But like everybody always has these like these thoughts about it. So I'm like, so when it comes to coffee, I'm not a coffee like expert or purist. And so if you are that, great. I'm glad you do it. But when I go there, I am literally trying to get coffee that just gets me going in the morning, but also has a great taste to it. So that's why I like Starbucks. So.
You did have a tea era, and then you also are obsessed with scents.
Yes, I am.
Cologne.
I will give you that. Shout out to my man Seth Tremor, by the way, who listens to the pod. Yes, when it comes to scents, when it comes to cologne, I went into my cologne era during COVID, and it got really dangerous because now it has become an outright like obsession. I've calmed down a little bit lately because my wife looked at me one day and she was like, "You literally for the rest of your life will never spray all this cologne out." And I was like, "That's not the point." I'm like, "The point is to have it. That's not the point. The point is that if I feel this type of way in the morning and I want to wear, I want to wear Mason Margiela, Jazz Club, I can wear Mason Margiela Jazz Club. If I don't wear Louis Vuitton afternoon swim because I'm feeling fresh today, I can wear afternoon swim.
Afternoon swim is gas. It is fire. It smells great.
It is elite. But
then you got that one, that one that
she hates it. Listen, shout out to Mansoria Red Tobacco. Amazing. Mansoria Red Tobacco. She doesn't like it.
Puts me in a bad mood.
Every time I can't, man, I have a headache. I'm like, dude, all right. Well, and you know what?
Definitely smells like tobacco.
And that's the one where I get a lot of compliments from when people do that. So
they're just trying to gas you.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Mansoria Red Tobacco. No, they're trying to gas me. I just walk in. Listen, if a brother smell good, he smell good. You know what I'm saying? So people just let me know, man, I like that smell. And you know what I love?
Sure.
I love when men are secure enough to ask another man, like, "Hey, man, what kind of scent you got on?" Like that. I do like when
men, like an ego thing.
Yeah, because sometimes dudes are like, they don't want to ask that. But I was at the cigar spot recently, and this dude walked by, and I'm like, "Yo, whatever scent it was," I'm like, "Dude, I don't care what anybody thinks." I hope my man don't think I'm hitting on him or anything. I was like, "Hey,
that's what y'all think." Like,
dude,
says I like your cologne, you're like, "Oh."
Yeah, people think you're kind of sus if you go in there and you ask the dude, like, "Hey, man, like you smell good," like, you know what I'm saying? People feel that way. So I saw a dude came by. I was like, "Hey," so I had to be real mad. Hey, big dog. Like, I started that way. I was like, "Big dog, man, what kind of?"
Hey, man.
And I was like, "Hey, big dog," but I didn't say like scent. You know what I'm saying? That's I was like, "Hey, big dog, what kind of?" I was like, "What type of cologne you got on?" And then he went in and he told me.
It must have been real nice to smell it over in the.
Yeah, in the
cigar lounge, you could smell his cologne.
That's what I'm saying, man. Yeah, it was a nice elite scent that he had on. And so, yeah, man, I love cologne, stuff like that. So, anyway.
Let's jump into it. Today, we're going to talk about why authentic leadership isn't about volume. So, what do you mean by volume? Like, to be an authentic leader, you don't have to yell?
Well, I think there's a big push today about this idea of like quiet leadership, of where, because we've seen such this world of where it seemed like it was the boisterous, like kind of person who was charismatic, who came in, had all the cliches, who were like the motivational speaker type of guy. Again, hear me when I say like a Gary V, right? When you see a Gary Vaynerchuk, like that type of like energy when someone comes in, these guys who you see selling master classes or whatever. It was just all that type of leadership. And now I think there's been really a push against that, so now the whole thing becomes about like, man, quiet leadership. And so it's this idea of a response to that type of leadership, because that became kind of the archetype of what people felt like leadership had to be. You had to come in and command the room. When you were in a meeting, people had to know. You had to practice executive presence. You had to be the one to where you walked in, you had control of the situation in the room that you were leading. A lot of times it was by actions, voice, volume, stuff like that. And so now there's been this real push against that. And I don't think leadership was ever really about that, especially though in the future of where I think leadership's going. I think there's going to be a real shift and change.
So with the push going towards, let's say, the quiet leadership, can you maybe define what is quiet leadership?
Yeah. Quiet leadership, a lot of times it'll be people who they think are more introverted, who aren't very, they may be soft-spoken. They may be people who are very slow to what they communicate and speak. They walk into a room, you may not be able to they don't take up a lot of space when they walk into a room by just even like their presence or whatever. And so it becomes that person. It's the person who, even their tone and how they talk, their tone isn't like loud. Their tone is way more like soft-spoken, very even keel. That's kind of where I think is what's been a popular thing that people are wanting to say, this is the new type of leadership that's happening in corporate America. And though I believe that in the past, that type of leadership was not invited and welcomed then, but I think it's leaving us with a problem, is because whenever there is something, whenever we have one model, there always becomes the opposite model that swings a completely different direction now. So again, it's not shocking that it goes from this kind of really hyper, kind of charismatic, loud, boisterous leadership to now being this leadership that's very soft-spoken, very more, not the extrovert, but the introvert. It's like the opposite side of that. And I think that that's going to leave us with a problem, because I think going from one extreme to the next extreme does not fix the problem.
I don't know that we've ever done an episode on this. So what is leadership? How do you define that?
I define leadership as someone who carries weight toward a mission. I think, as we heard when Marty Linsky was on the podcast, I think anyone can be a leader. It does not matter what position you hold. I think anyone who's helping carry weight toward a mission. You can be a child in the home. If there's a mission of that home, of your family, you can carry your part, your weight. I think if you are a low-level kind of intern somewhere, right, you can carry weight if you're helping do your job toward a mission of where the company is going. I believe everyone has that ability to do that. So I think someone who's carrying weight towards somewhere is someone who's actually leading.
So what qualities do you think are necessary from either versions of those models to be a good leader?
I think that one of the things is that a really good leader is about the mission and making sure people are flourishing within that. They're not just thinking about themselves, because I think that's one of the first qualities. Are you someone who's about the betterment of other people? I think that's a great quality. I think another quality is actually self-awareness, stuff we talk about, really the big thing, authenticity. We talk a lot about it here. I think a really good leader is authentic. I think they have a great understanding of self. I think they're good. They have the toughness to remain that, and they're using their skill, their give, their personality, whatever it is, to actually empower other people. I think the other parts of leadership, I think it's a tenacity that people have, that there's actually a toughness that people have. It doesn't matter if you're quiet, you're loud, whatever, that you're willing to fight through stuff. You're willing to go through hardship. You're willing to knock down a door until you can get the answer that you're actually looking for. So there's really a tenacious factor to them. So those are like three. I mean, there's other factors that go into it, but those are three very important ones.
Which model would you say that you fall to?
I fall to the more charismatic, more of the one that's more extroverted, even though if you know me, I'm more introverted in certain environments, but I think in leadership, I walk into a room and again, I'm a verbal processor. Again, my height and my size actually take up space when you walk into a room. So naturally, I'm going to have more of that when I step into a room and I step into a space. I
actually want to talk about that a little bit more, and then we can go back to volume. we do this something here called the predictive index, and so we do a little bit of personality assessments, readbacks, and you're like the classic example of a human being who you are so introverted.
Yes.
Like when you're in social settings, especially with people that you don't know, you're like, I don't really want to talk to anybody. I'm going to stand in the corner. I'm going to be on my phone. Like you look a little awkward, like the whole thing. And I'm that way too. But there's just something about you that you assume a position, and not because like it's a sense of duty almost whenever you walk into certain spaces. At what age did that start to shift for you? Like, did you always show these like natural leadership qualities? Because you were also a very quiet, emotional kid. So when did you start to see that shift, and why?
I think I would see the shift more right when I was around in my like 19, 20, when I was 19 or 20, around that time. But I always been someone that when I was comfortable with you, this was the personality that a lot of people get to see when I'm comfortable with you. Like if I'm in a room with people I know, then I end up taking up a lot of space in the room. But if I don't know you, that's why I'm not a great fundraiser, right? That's why I'm not great in like networking environments, because like for me, I feel most of those things are just so shallow to me. And so again, I don't have a problem with it, but just for me, I get in those rooms, I'm like, I just don't want to talk to people just so I can like, oh, let me talk to you because I'm trying to leverage something from you. I'm just like, I don't even like doing that. Like, it's weird. So I'll go to events. I'll never forget, I got invited to something at the governor, here in Florida. We live in a state capital, at the governor's mansion. So I go in there, it's this big event, and I was in there, and I literally, like you said, I was like over there. I mean, all these high, powerful people in the state of Florida, and I really just sat there. I knew a couple people in there. I would talk to them. Then I would sit over there on my phone, kind of awkwardly just move around, because it's like,
I can envision it in my mind. But it's interesting because most people, though, like I guess what you describe as an epitome of a business owner is going to walk into a space like that. They're going to read the room, determine some of the most important people in the room, aim to talk to them, talk more about what they're doing, and try to get some form of pull.
Yes. No, and I realized that in that room, that I think the way that I'm wired is like, I don't want to be in a room and like just take. I actually want to be in a room, if I'm like talking to you, like I genuinely want to know about you. I don't want to like talk to you, well, let me talk to him to do that. And I've done that before. Like I've had those conversations where I'm like, okay, let me talk to this person. I know they got some power, and I walk away and it's weird. I just feel like dirty. I feel empty when I do that. And even lately, I've really tried to be more mindful of that, of like when I walk into a room, it's what you said. I a lot of times never knew how much of a presence I can carry when I walk into a room. I just think I'm like just like kind of like normal. And I was talking to my daughter one day, and I was talking to her, and we were asking, and she mentioned something to me. She's like, yeah, Dad, like when you walk into a room, she was like, everyone takes notice when you're in a room. And I was like, really? She's like, absolutely. She's like, she's like, man, well, if I'm walking around with her friends, or if she's like, I've seen you in other environments. Said like, you come to a basketball game or you go to this event, you actually are in that event and you're thinking like, oh man, there's these people, no one really wants to be around. You're like, no, literally everyone wants to kind of do that. They're just following your lead because you get really standoffish in those moments. So they're thinking, oh, he's too, not that I'm too good, but how he just doesn't talk, So like they're feeling the same intimidation you may feel, they're feeling that. And so I was like, oh, so when I walk into a room now, I'm really walking in there with this mentality of, when I can fully understand and remind myself of who I am, I add the most value to that room. Mm-hmm. And because again, when you don't, what you end up doing is you shrink back, or you try to start being something that you're not. And I think that becomes a very difficult thing. And I think you don't bring the very best of what you can add value to a room or to a space when you come in there and you don't have a genuinely real good understanding of you and have confidence in that.
Yeah. And I feel like that ties into what we're talking about today, because volume isn't necessarily just the loudness or quietness of your tone. It is the essence that you bring into a room. And so do you believe that the essence that you bring into rooms whenever it comes to leadership, do you think that that's something that has just been uniquely given to you, or is that something that you've developed over time? And if so, how?
Yeah, no, I really have developed it over time. I think a lot of it has just been trial and error of actually having. I naturally start with the belief system. I started with the belief system that like I'm just not good enough, right? I've talked a lot about that. So when you do that, you still walk into a room, and in the back of the mind, it's the thing that's playing in the background, right? It's the operating system that's constantly running of like, oh, you're just not good enough, even though you're not consciously thinking about that. So when you walk into a room and it doesn't matter what the name is. Just say it's a big brand or a person with a well-known name. You naturally, without even knowing, you walk into a room, and I would walk in and be way more like I shrink back. And here's what I realized when I did that: I was not adding. I became what I feared in that room, that I'm not going to be add enough value. People are not going to think I'm as good as whatever. And the reason why is because I'd walk in that room, and in my mind I didn't think I was. And I would just, without even knowing, operate out of that. So what I had to do is, whenever I go into a place, is become very aware that when I walk in, say, no, this is what I bring to this place. And when I do it, so I need to be very confident in that part, but also knowing what it allowed me to do is know what I'm not good at, so that when they're talking about something that's in a room that I don't have an expertise, I don't feel the need to have to chime in and talk about that specific issue or act like I'm an expert. I could actually ask more questions. I'm like, no, I'm not an expert in that area, but in certain areas I am. And so when I walk in, I need to know that. And it's been a while. It's really been over the last year, even probably, I would even say short than that, last 6 months, to where I've walked into rooms, and just having that mentality has literally just that has shifted the room. Mm-hmm. It shifted the work that we've done. We get work done a lot faster with people because I walk in, I'm not doubting anymore. And you've been a huge part of like helping me like continuously remind me of that when we walk into a room, because now we can get somewhere, because I'm like, no, we've done this enough. I understand what needs to happen. Da, da, da. And in that, it allows us to go in and be very strong, and people follow you when you do that. People don't follow people when they feel like they're uncertain. Like, that's one of the things my wife used to always tell me. She's like, when I know you're very secure in what we're doing, she's like, that's the safest I feel, is when that happens. People don't feel safe when they're in the room with somebody and they're like, and it's not about what you say. It's not about the performance of it. It's literally, you can feel it. Mm-hmm. You can feel when someone is like, oh, they're super secure in who they are. They're super secure in what we're doing. You're like, I may not understand what we're doing in this situation, but man, I just can feel that there's a security with that person, and you're willing to follow someone like that.
Do you feel like there would be the same sense of security if, even when you felt uncertain, you would say, I feel uncertain, but this is what I think? Like, if you embrace the uncertainty a little bit more rather than viewing the uncertainty as like an incompetency?
Yeah, because I think people are okay with, like, I think people are way more okay with
we were talking about this during the session.
Yes. Yeah. People are okay with like humility. When you're able to go into a room, you says, hey, you know what, man, I don't know that. A great example of where I learned this from was a few years back. I was actually taking a class, and there was a guy by the name of Dr. Tim Mackey. He's one of the world's greatest Bible teachers, runs something called the Bible Project. And again, this guy is an outright, I mean, one of the top probably
Incredible.
3, 4, 5 in the world in teaching the Bible. Speaks fluent Hebrew, all these things. And he was, and like, I mean, and he is well known. So people were asking questions, and I watched his humility in the room. It was unbelievable. Someone asked him a question, and he literally just stopped. He's like, man, like, that's an incredible question. He's like, I never thought about that. And so in that moment, he could have been like, I'm the expert, so I got to be able to answer. You know what? And he could have talked about it. And listen, he could have said something that was completely wrong. We would have believed him, right? You know what I mean? It's Tim Mackey. He's an expert. But what he said in that moment, he was like, man, that's a very good question. You know what? I'm going to look into that tonight. So we had a class next. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to try to answer that, get some help. He's like, but man, that's a really good question. I'm going to ponder about that tonight, give you an answer. And I was blown away by this guy who's an expert, willing in front of, about 100 people in the room who were coming to learn from him, to say, yeah, I don't know that, but I will. Let me go see what I can find out. Mm-hmm. And just that, the idea of willing to do that, being open, it just showed me it was this great leadership in that moment. And you look at Tim, he's a very soft-spoken. He's not a very big, doesn't have a huge personality. But man, when you're in that room and you're watching him, somebody else is just in one profession teach the Bible, and the stuff he's doing, it is unbelievable. Like, you're like, man, you will just follow, you're captivated. He doesn't have like the most charismatic voice. It's just, but because of what he knows, and he's very convinced of it, you just are like, oh man, like, no, that's really good. And so I think he's a prime example, somebody who leads really well. And so going back to it, I think when you're able to honor and just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that, but I can find out, or hey, you know what, I may know somebody who can help us with that. Or even being able, you're the expert and somebody says something in the room that you're like, I never thought about that. And you know what, you're probably right about that. That's a great idea. It's amazing because at the end you're secure. People love people, honestly, even though we don't say it, who are very secure in who they are.
So once you get to the point to where you have a pretty good understanding of the best version of yourself, the most authentic, the most transformative, but you have a belief that you aren't that. So even if you can see what the vision is, but deep down in your emotionality, you don't believe that you could truly be that or that you are that. And then you walk into a room and you kind of have these two things in front of you, who I am and then who I believe that I am in a negative sense. How do you not allow that feeling of being like, if you act as if you are the best version of yourself, that you're being a fraud? How do you not allow that feeling to dictate your behaviors?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's being able to be very present, to remind yourself in the moment. It's not about what you say. It's about an understanding of internally, like, no, this is who I am. And in that, when you know who you are, so for example, like, I don't have to walk around trying to convince, I use this as an example, trying to convince somebody I'm black, right? Like, I mean, that I'm black. I don't have to go, I don't walk around trying to like, man, let me make sure I show you that I'm black. No, I know that. And so in that just gives you a security of this is who I am. Like, I don't have to try to, or I'm 6'6". I don't have to like try to like say, no, I'm a tall guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm 6'6". You just have a security. So here's what happens. A lot of time it really is, it's a belief. It's a consistent reminder, because what happens is you're in the room and what you want to do is hear that. You want to start trying to bring the stuff that's in the back, that operating system, that ghostwriter in the back that's constantly writing the negative script. You want to try to make that come to the forefront. You want to be mindful of, because it's always running. You just have been so used to allowing it to run. It's just become a normal part, just as breathing. It's a normal part until you start to realize, like, hold on, why in the world do I feel some type of way? Why do I have such these thoughts? I'm like, nothing even happened. You know what I mean? Like, I've been in rooms where all of a sudden I have felt such like a fraud. And I'm like, and the meeting hadn't even started. No one said anything. Nothing's happened. And I feel some type of way. And I'm like, and I started having to become very much so. In that moment, I think, but in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm hearing that. And I'm like, nope, that's not who I am. Nope, I'm good. This is who I am. And so the whole thing becomes, it's not because there's not evidence of it. You know what I'm saying? We're not saying like, man, because I think that's the false thing in today's world. Like, just believe it and you can become it. Like, no. You can become what you are. Not just if I just believe it, I can be anything I want. That's stupid. You can become what you actually are, and there's evidence for it. There's skill. Now, you may not see the fullness of that evidence yet. You may not be walking in the greatest part of that of your life yet, but when there's evidence, so I watch you, there's evidence of your life, of like wisdom that you have when you're in rooms. So now, is that where you're going to be 10 years from now? No. You'll look back and be like, man, I can't believe that, you'll look back to, or even 5 years when we started this thing, where you're like, I can't believe you actually let me say anything. But I saw those glimpses. And so now the thing is, you speak to the things that you know and what you do have expertise in, and what you do, the wisdom. You don't try to outkick your coverage. Because you're going to learn things and you're going to keep getting better at things. And that's where I think that's the biggest belief, is like being present, bringing that negative script to the forefront, reminding yourself who you are, but you're reminding yourself of things that you are because of evidence. And that evidence doesn't have to be like, man, like, you're the greatest expert in the world in it, but that there's a natural bend that you have towards certain things.
When's a time where you've had high volume on something that wasn't really you and it worked?
Wow, that is a really good question.
And maybe internally it didn't feel good, but worked externally.
I think that early on, and I'm just trying to think of, there's been many times probably in my life, but the thing that comes to my mind first is that when we first started doing a lot of like the consulting work that we're doing, is that we would end up getting way too much into like all the organizational structure, and trying to do everything for people, right? I'm like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We were just going, it was like we were doing everything.
Yeah, we were now there creatives.
Yeah, we were
they're
doing
HR.
We were doing
they're everything.
And we were acting like experts in there. And it was like, you know what? And we had the ability to pull some of that stuff off and did a good job with it. But what I started to realize, a lot of that stuff started to like impact me personally, because it was like, man, I was like, why do I want to be an expert in that? And it was because I was like, man, I didn't have security that the things we were doing was of enough value. So we had to do what the normal other people in corporate did, consulting people did, and we're going to do what they do, but even do it better than what they do, when that was never what we were meant to do.
Almost so that we can legitimize the culture side of things.
The culture side of things, authenticity, because you got to think, the way we're like doing stuff now, this over the last year and a half has become a thing that now all the major consulting firms are talking about it. But we were doing this from the beginning. And so because of that, we were like, no, we had to find a way to legitimize who we were. And I look back on
said
that.
Legitimatize. That's not a word.
What did you say?
I said legitimatize. That's not a word.
And so we go back and we look like we had to go forward and to build to get them to make sure we were something. And I look back on that moment, I'm like, man, I wish we could have been a little bit more us, but we also learned a lot. I think what we learned, and that's why I always tell people, the process is okay, because a lot of times you aren't aware you're doing it. You know, you may feel that way. And you're like, man, but this is what we've learned. We learned through this whole process that a part of our business was not just DEI. What we ultimately got to is like, man, we can just go in somewhere and we can help people solve complex problems. We've learned that, man, you know, we want to come and get right to the culture part, which is important, because I feel like that's the air you breathe, right? It's fixing the oxygen. But sometimes people are bleeding out. Sometimes they got financial issues. Sometimes they got retention issues. Sometimes, they've got issue in sales. So for us, we have to go in, what is the immediate need, so we can stop that bleeding, so that we can actually fix. Because a lot of times when there's a lot of there's an infection, there's a culture issue there, but we can't get to that culture issue until this happens. Because every time we try to get to, because we're trying to get right to the real stuff, because we know it's going to change. Everybody wants to focus on what's happening, which I get. If all of a sudden nobody's thinking about you having an infection in your body, if all of a sudden you keep going, like your freaking arms bleeding, I'm like, dude, I don't care about the infection. We'll deal with that later. Can you please stop this bleeding, right? And I think that's what we've learned over the time. So going back to your original question, I just think that was one of those things I wish I would have been a little bit more authentic in that. Because I would walk away and I'm like, and it did impact my body, because now I won't allow it. Like the other day, we're in Chicago, we're working with a client that we love, and here's the thing, as we were working with them, we were working, that day, we got up and we were up at 6 a.m. And by the time we
didn't go to sleep till maybe 2.
Yeah. And it's like, and then we started with them the next morning and we're just rocking all day. But I walked out so energized from that trip, and it's because it was a client where we didn't get caught into doing stuff that was not us. It wasn't like we're trying to solve their financial issues, or which they didn't have, but like we're like, oh no, this is what we do. This is what they want us to solve. Here's where we saw the biggest needs, man. And it was so life-giving doing that. So I think when you're doing it, you would get, like, my body actually feels that work when I'm doing those things.
Mm-hmm. Early on, how did you view learning who you are and how to apply that with volume within a room as an experiment? Because there's times that you're going to do it wrong. There's times where, like we said, like you're going to do it wrong, but it's actually going to work out. How do you look back at that situation and realize that even though it worked, it's not the greatest representation of who I believe that I'm supposed to be as a leader? Yeah,
it's what we talk about a lot. It's like you always have to do the autopsy of the situation. And so that's one thing I would do. When we would leave an environment or a room or later, then I would think about what happened. And I would think about it not just at the surface level. Oh, did we get the results? Because that's just the surface level. Because you can get results and do things the wrong way. Just like you can lift weights and do it the wrong way and lift heavier weight, right? And my goal was just to lift heavier weight. But when it's all said and done, the most important thing that you're trying to do in that moment is not lift heavier weight. What you're trying to do in that moment is actually you want to do it the right way, because later it's going to really impact you. So what I would do is think 2 or 3 levels deeper than that. Man, okay, we got the results, but did we do it the way that we want to do it? Man, how did I feel during that time? Man, how did Bree respond? How did Michelle respond? How did Doc respond? What was going on there? And I would just think about those things. And so I would tell you, whenever you're in a room, an environment, whatever, is afterwards, is to evaluate those things. That's personal leadership autopsies are one of the healthiest things you can ever do, because you learn from that. You learn to think constantly about it. And then when you do that, what you start to do, you're able to start to learn to do it in real time. You're able to be in a room. I was in a room a couple weeks back. I won't say who it was, but I'm in this room with all these people. All of a sudden, as I'm sitting in this room, I can naturally find myself starting to like shrink a little bit. And I was and it was like, I wasn't conscious of it, but I literally, because I've been trying to be very aware, I stopped myself and I'm like, what are you doing? Because in that room, and I'm not saying this, and I hope, people hear this the right way. In that room, there was not a person, not even close, not even remotely close. Anybody in that room who was a better leader than I was. It wasn't even close. But in that room, I started to shrink back because I'm like, oh, the brand of this organization of people, and I'm like, there's half these people in this room I would never even hire. So I'm like, what am I? And what happened? It changed. I didn't. You know what I did? I didn't say anything because normally what would happen, my insecurity, well, I gotta make sure I say something. No, I just like. No, it's just an internal belief. And I was able to remind myself, no, this is who I am. But in the moment, I was able to do the autopsy and the check right there in the moment. That's one of the most important things that you can do to learn how to bridge those gaps is by doing autopsies, walking out of meetings, interactions with your friends, whatever. What was going on? How are you feeling? What could you have done better? Was that from the purest form of who you are? You have to constantly dig deeper to understand that.
Mm-hmm. So going off the analogy that you talked about, like you don't have to convince anybody that you're Black, or you shouldn't have to convince anybody that you are. Yeah. It's also true, though, that depending on what space and environment you're in, how that manifests itself, it shows up a little bit differently. And so whenever you're in spaces, how do you pay attention to, okay, what does this room need?
Yeah.
What do I have that this room needs? And when do you decide how and what level of volume to interact with it?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, you said the most important thing. What does the room need? Most of the times people come into places and it's not what the room needs. It's what we want to give to the room because we're trying to prove to the room or prove to ourselves or prove to our mom or our dad or whoever's not even in the room that we are this expert at this versus saying, what does the room need? Because what if the room does not need your expertise? But your leadership, you have the ability to move a room. So what if you're like, man, the room needs this person's gift. So a great example, the other day, we're working with a client and we're in there working with the client and we're in the room. I'm leading the room and there's really high level leaders that are sitting in the room, but I know that you add real value to that room and the stuff you needed. So that's where I could have said, okay, no, this is this, but I knew there was going to be value that you were going to add. So I was, hey, Bree, what do you got? And I told you before, Bree, when I say something to you, you need to make sure you're ready to go. And normally what you'd have done, you'd be like, I don't have anything. But you did. You spoke up, and the thing that you said added value in that room right there. So that was very powerful. So I think sometimes when you know what the room needs, leaders give the room what they need. And that what they need may not come from you. It may come from a colleague. It may come from the intern who's sitting on, they're not even at the main table. They're sitting on the outside table. But you're willing as a leader, hey, you just know they got something to invite them in. So that's the most important thing you can do in those moments is see what the room needs and then be the person to make sure the room is getting what it needs to. That's the person who ultimately leads the room.
How does someone young find environments to practice this in? I
think you can practice it in environments with like your friends. So let's just say like a friend is going through something, right? And you got to say it's 5 of you. And and out of your friends, and you are sitting there and you're like, man, what is my friend right now? They're going through something. What do they need? They need tough love right now. Do they need encouragement? Do they need practical? Do they just need someone who can really sit and listen to them, who asks really probing questions? And so that's the way you can practice. It's like, okay, I think they need this. And you may be the challenger in the group, right? You're like, they don't really need that right now. But this person over here, she has the ability to do that. All right, hey. And you begin to say, man, such. Maybe you go in there for, hey, just with who you are, you get all your friends together. Hey, they're going through this. We really need to let her lead in this. You do a great job asking questions. We want to be here to support. Or maybe in that moment, they're not saying anything. You pull that person in. That's a way you can practice it almost in like any type of environment is that you walk in there. At some point in time, you have the ability to lead a room. And that could be, like I said, that could be in like your friend. That could be like at your family. That could be during like Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. Everybody hates Thanksgiving dinner because it could go crazy, right? Well, what if, okay, man, how do I go on Thanksgiving dinner? And now my whole goal is to make this, man, fun, interactive, where there's no like freaking family like drama that's going to happen. Okay, well, be a leader in that room. Being a leader in the room may be like, okay, I can't let my uncle get to his fourth drink, right? Because he gets to his fourth drink, then it's gonna every time no one decides to stop him from drinking his fourth drink, and that's when it goes sideways. Well, then you're the leader in the room. You go, maybe it's your uncle, maybe you go, and maybe you go to your father, say, listen, I want us to enjoy this. We all know that Uncle Larry gets wild after his fourth drink. Can you please not let him get his fourth drink tonight? Can you even go talk to him? Who's the brother or who's the family member that has Uncle Larry's ear? Is it his mom? Is it his sister? Is it maybe his cousin? Maybe it's a nephew or niece. Whoever has his ear, you use that to go talk to him, to then begin to say, hey, we need to make sure, because he's willing to listen, because maybe we want to really enjoy this and whatever. That's a great way to lead the room. Now, everybody's able to have and at the end of Thanksgiving dinner, you know what? You may not get any credit for his incredible Thanksgiving dinner. There's no freaking drama. Mm-hmm. But you were the one behind the scenes moving chess pieces in order for that to happen, because you were willing to do what you said. And I thought that was the most important thing that's been said today is this: what does the room need? And then as a leader, you go figure it out. That's this whole thing about quiet leadership, all that. What quiet leadership is about, it's not about volume. It's not about you're introverted, extroverted. What I believe is, when we've been talking about this and even some of our other podcasts, is the idea of moving in the shadows. In today's leadership, because we are living in an era to where it's about going from a complicated, complex world. In a complex world, you have to have people who solve problems. And in solving problems, sometimes you have to move with the least resistance to move the room around. And so sometimes people may not even notice that you are, but eventually people will realize, man, there's something about whenever they show up in a room, man, they just seem to go better. When somebody shows them the room, this happens here. And you learn how to give the room what it needs and move pieces that way.
How do you think that you grow in being able to have the maturity to carry a personal responsibility and belief that you can actually change something? So with the example that you gave, which I feel like maybe a little bit touchier because it's family, but organizations are like family. Yep. Every sense of community mirrors the family dynamic in a lot of different ways. But especially amongst younger people, there's this belief that if I'm at the family event and I know that things are going to take this kind of turn, it's not my responsibility to be involved. And so if I don't like it, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And of course, there's nuance. There is situations where that is the best thing to do. But how do you infuse a sense of belief that you can actually create change in order to impact other people's decisions?
It's really about how much you feel a responsibility and a care to see a change. And so here's what I mean. There's certain environments where honestly, I don't care. Yeah, I'm in it, but I'm like, honestly, I don't feel a responsibility. I don't feel a conviction by it. I don't feel any. So I'm like, and honestly, I'm okay by it. I'm okay. Listen, I'm in certain rooms where I'm like, yeah, this is kind of dysfunctional, or I would do it better. I'll give an example. I'm a part of, I won't get into details, but part of something even larger than just an organization. And there's things that, man, it's phenomenal about this organization. There's things that are not. Do I think at times I have a lot of things I feel like could really help because of being disruptive? Absolutely. But what I've come to settle in is like realizing what is my responsibility, what it's not. And here's what I tell people. Unless I'm asked, and like, as I say, organizationally, if I'm asked to step in and help, I'll do it. Going back to the family dynamic, you have to make a decision on, man, like how, do you feel like you can bring change? Let's say you try to do it, nothing ever works. You just live in a dysfunctional mess. Then you got to read the room like, okay, ain't nothing I can do. I'm going to remove myself. I think you got to also it really is a passion. I think when you're passionate about something, you work hard to figure it out. And you just keep trying. You'll keep trying. You just don't give up after the first time. You just keep working. And here's the thing. It's not always about just the end result. It's about the process. It's about learning. Because you know what? You may try in your family and it never works. But the things you learn there, you'll go right into a room, into an organization that you're working for, and you'll be able to move that room around because of what you learned here. Even though it didn't work here in family, it worked over here. So we always say this, the process is the most important part. We want results, but the process is as important as the results are because you're learning in both of them.
Something that you said this past week that really stuck out to me was that the standard can carry the volume. Yep. And I feel, did that come from CY?
No.
Okay, where did that come from? Actually, it sounded like one of his.
One of CY. No, really. No, I say that. No, it actually came from, I was sitting with about a couple of years ago, about a year ago, I was sitting with a coach, and we were talking, and he thought the reason why the first year he had success was his because of like he was just a dog when it came to it, man. He was when guys stepped out of line, he cussed them out, he was screaming at him, da da da. And the second year he tried to empower more of his assistants, and what happens like I stopped being this, I stopped yelling, I stopped doing this, and I stopped. Like that wasn't it. It was about the standard. They didn't do this. It wasn't about your yelling. Was it just yelling, or did you have like a consequence? He's like, I had a consequence. It's like when they did something, did you have a reward? You had a reward. I'm like, that's it. That's the standard. That's what it was. It wasn't you yelling. It was the standard. And so in that moment, it just came to me. I'm like, man, the standard does the screaming. The standard does all the yelling. The standard carries all the volume. I don't have to yell at you. I don't have to do any of those things. What I have to do in those moments is, no, we just hold the standard there. And when you hold the standard, it does that. So when you're mad, I don't have to now be a certain way towards you. I don't have to like, man, you better no. Did we agree to this? Okay. Did you do this? No. All right. Well, here's the consequences for it. Nothing more, nothing less. And they can have whatever feelings they want, but I'm like, the standard is the standard. If you don't like it, you don't have to be there, but this is what it does. And so I think that's where holding people to accountability, and not just accountability, but rewarding people when they do that. And that goes to another thing. We were having a conversation last night about a person who is, really talented, but in this organization, they haven't ever had a high level of like discipline, but also they need a very high level of like, man, of nurturance, of really gassing them up. And so you have to give them both. That person. Some people need a high level structure. They're already filled with a lot. They need structure. Some people, they have structure, but they don't have enough, like somebody building them up. I mean, you got to do that. Again, great leaders find the need and they figure out. And here's the thing, that does not mean you have to be the person. Like an example is this. I am not a very, for me, I can be like encouraging and I can be whatever, but the way I encourage is like, I inspire you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be like, no, I see this. I'm going to call it out, and it's going to be this whole thing and whatever. I can inspire you to go and call out what you can be. Some people, man, they just have really good, just kind, good words that people need to like hear. Like Michelle, who's on our team, has such a high level of empathy where she really she can sit in a place with people and give them words that mean so much to them. It's not these like, man, big inspiration. You're going to go here. It was just like, oh man, meeting them right where they are, right? You do a great job of, man, there's like a lot of just very much so, oh, I've seen how you were, I see this now, of really good practical wisdom and so on and so forth. Those are the types of things, when you know that, you give people what they need. Real good leaders lead, and we talk about lead from the shadows or quiet, they help give people, even if it doesn't come from them. Everybody wants to be the person that does all that. You can't be the empathy. You can't be like the super empathetic person, the super motivator, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the super listener. Like, I mean, we want everybody, like, no, you got great listeners. Like, get them involved. You don't need to it drives you crazy. It drives me crazy to be the person to have to probe and ask you all these questions. Like, that drives me up. Well, I already know the freaking answer. Let me just tell you so we move on. Like, but you know, though, people don't need that sometimes. They need somebody to pull that. So, man, put that person involved. Get them involved, because you know what? It's about getting them what they need. And what it challenges us to see what type of leader are we. Do we say we really want to lead and be for the betterment of people, or do we want to be the leader that people see, that I'm the one with all the answers? And I don't think that is the right type of leader. I think the best leaders are those who give the people exactly all of what they need, and they bring the resources there.
How do you know what people need and not base what you believe that they need off of what they want?
I think that as you do it enough, you can begin to, that's why doing the autopsy on all situations, because you begin to learn people. After a while, you know what I'm saying? It's like people begin to be like, okay, like there may be little deviations here and there, but at the end of the day, like, yep, I'm probably about 95% right on this. So that's why you always have to be looking and doing the autopsy. So I think the more you do an autopsy, the more you look at people, the more you say, why did that person respond that way? What's really going on with them? You get somebody older who's there. What do you think is going on with them? And you try to start looking at the pattern. So that's how you start to learn what they need versus what they want. I think the other thing too is a willingness. I think sometimes we won't give people what they need because we're afraid to lose them. We're afraid that they'll walk away from the organization. We're afraid they'll walk away from our friendship. But here's the thing. All you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. They'll eventually walk away anyway if you don't help give them what they need. We have somebody that's in our organization right now that over the last year has been a really difficult time for him because super talented, adds a lot of value on this, but I know where he wants to go. And because I knew where he wants to go, I know there were some things internally he had to get. So I had to put him in a structure that did that. And for him, it was because it was about trust. Was he going to be willing? Because he always says, man, I trust, I believe you, man, I want you to help me. I'm like, okay, so this is what I'll have you do. Now you see if somebody's willing to trust you. And to his credit, man, he went through it. He's been going through it. And I've watched the acceleration of his leadership over the last several months because of his willingness to trust and his willingness to go through that. And so I think you got to also, giving people what they need has to fight through our own insecurities of feeling like if someone rejects that, and you used to help me with this, if someone rejects that, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting what you represent. Hey guys, I hope today was helpful for you. Here's what we really want to get to. In today's world that we're heading into, there's such a need for leaders. The extroverted leader, the introverted leader. When we talk about the quiet leader, it's the leader who's willing to do whatever it takes in a room in order to move a group toward a mission. They're willing to be those who solve complex problems. They don't have to be the one who's the center of the show, but when people step back and look, eventually they'll recognize they were the conductor. They will recognize they were the center of the show. When you're in a room, be the person that gives people what they need, not actually what they want. Until next time, keep writing new rules.